Let me say something that might sound arrogant right now but will make complete sense in 12 minutes. When you stop chasing, when you stop begging, when you finally turn around and walk in the opposite direction with your head up and your focus forward, they come back. Not always immediately, not always loudly, but they come back. And when they do, they come back different, more serious, more committed, more aware of exactly what they almost lost. I've seen this pattern play out too many times to dismiss it as coincidence. And more importantly, the ancient Stoic philosophers documented the exact psychological and spiritual reasons why this happens with breathtaking accuracy over 2,000 years ago. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about playing games or making someone jealous. This is about something far more powerful. This is about what happens when you finally value yourself enough to stop shrinking for someone who wasn't ready to receive you. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to explain exactly why they'll be back, and more importantly, why by then you might not need them to be. Stay with me. Picture this: you gave everything. You were present, patient, understanding, available. You made yourself smaller so they could feel bigger. You swallowed your needs so theirs could be met. You stayed when leaving would have been wiser. And they still pulled away. Maybe they said they needed space. Maybe they became distant without explanation. Maybe they left entirely. And now you're sitting with this confusion that feels like a physical weight. How could someone who claimed to care just go? Here's the answer the Stoics give, and it's uncomfortable but liberating. People do not value what costs them nothing. Not because they're cruel, not because they're evil, but because human psychology is wired for this reality. We appreciate what required something from us. We take for granted what was always simply there. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." The dynamic changed. You were too available, too accommodating, too willing to absorb whatever they offered and call it enough. Today, everything changes. Because the moment you apply these Stoic principles, the entire energy of the situation shifts. And that shift, it's what brings them back. The first reason they'll be back: you return radically to yourself. Right now, if you're honest, you've probably lost pieces of yourself in this situation. Your interests have shrunk. Your friendships have faded. Your goals have been quietly deprioritized. Your world has gradually condensed around this one person and whether they're okay, whether they're happy, whether they'll stay. This is the most unattractive thing a human being can do to themselves, and they felt it, even if they couldn't name it. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." But you stopped knowing who you were. You became a reflection of their needs instead of an expression of your own identity. And people cannot deeply respect desire or commit to someone who has no center of their own. So here's what radical self-return looks like. You pick back up the things you abandoned. The hobby you stopped because it took time away from them. The friendships you neglected because you were always available for their calls. The goals you quietly shelved because pursuing them felt selfish. You stop living in reaction to their presence or absence and start living in alignment with your own values and direction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, confine yourself to the present, not to their timeline, not to their decisions, not to whether they're coming back. The present moment and what you can do with it. Here's the psychological reality. When someone who was orbiting around you suddenly develops their own gravitational pull, it's disorienting and magnetic simultaneously. The person who was always available becomes unavailable. The person who was always adjusting stops adjusting. The person who was always watching for their response stops watching. And that absence, that sudden withdrawal of anxious attention is felt immediately. They notice. They can't explain why, but they notice. And noticing turns into wondering. And wondering turns into reaching out. Return to yourself. Not as a strategy, as a necessity, because you lost yourself and you need yourself back regardless of what they decide to do. The second reason they'll be back: your silence becomes undeniable. You've been communicating, texting, calling, explaining yourself, justifying your worth, making your case for why this relationship, this connection, this dynamic deserves to continue. Stop, not out of anger, not as punishment, but because everything you're saying is working against you. Seneca wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." Here's what your words are communicating right now, regardless of their content. I am afraid. I am desperate. I need your decision to feel okay about myself. And desperation, however understandable, is not attractive. It does not inspire commitment. It inspires withdrawal. But silence communicates something entirely different. Silence says, "I am okay without your response. My life continues. My worth is not contingent on your validation." Silence creates space, and in that space they're left alone with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own memories of who you were when you were fully yourself and not begging for their attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Is reaching out right? Is it moving you forward? Is it serving either of you? In most cases, the honest answer is no. It's serving your anxiety, not your growth or the situation. The silent strategy isn't about making them miss you through manipulation. It's about giving yourself time to breathe, to heal, to return to yourself. And as a natural consequence of that genuine shift, the energy they feel from you transforms. They used to feel pursued. Now they feel absence. And human beings are wired to move toward what they sense moving away from them. Your silence is not weakness. It is the loudest statement you can make. It says, "I know my worth, and I won't diminish it by continuing to justify it to someone who isn't ready to recognize it." They'll hear that message clearly, and it will linger. The third reason they'll be back: you stop waiting and start elevating. This is where the Stoic philosophy becomes truly transformative. Most people in your position are waiting for them to come back, waiting for clarity, waiting for the situation to resolve before they start living fully again. The Stoics would call this a profound waste of the only life you've been given. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." You are alive right now, today, this moment. And every day you spend waiting is a day you chose not to live. Elevation means this: you take the energy you were pouring into this situation and redirect it entirely toward your own growth, your health. You start training, moving, strengthening your body because your physical state affects your mental and emotional state profoundly. Your mind. You read. You learn. You expose yourself to ideas that expand your perspective and remind you that this situation, as consuming as it feels, is a tiny fragment of an enormous world full of possibility. Your purpose. What were you building before this consumed you? What did you want to create, achieve, contribute? Return to that. Your social world. Who have you been neglecting? Who in your life deserves your presence and has been receiving your distraction instead? Here's what elevation does to the other person. It makes you objectively more. Not more as a performance for their benefit, but genuinely more. More fulfilled, more interesting, more grounded, more alive. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." What is in your power? Your choices, your habits, your direction, your growth. Take those things and run with them. And when they see you on social media, through mutual friends, through whatever lens they happen to observe your life through, they won't see someone diminished by their absence. They'll see someone expanded by it. That image is impossible to forget, and very, very hard to resist returning to. The fourth reason they'll be back: you become the version of yourself they weren't ready for. Here's a truth that might reframe this entire situation for you. When they pulled away, it wasn't necessarily because you weren't enough. It may have been because they weren't ready for the depth of what you were offering. Your consistency scared them. Your love felt like pressure. Your availability felt like a weight they didn't know how to carry. Not because those things were wrong, but because they weren't at a level of maturity where they could receive them. Seneca wrote, Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Their pulling away was the end of one chapter. But here's what the Stoics understood about human development. People grow. People mature. People reach points in their journey where what once scared them becomes what they desperately want. And when they reach that point, they think about who offered it when they weren't ready. They think about you. But here's the critical distinction. The you they come back to cannot be the same you that they left. That version, anxious, diminished, orbiting around their decisions, doesn't inspire renewed commitment. The you they come back to needs to be the version that was forged in their absence. Stronger, clearer, more self-possessed, more alive. Less dependent on their approval for your sense of worth. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Their absence was the impediment. Let it advance you. Because when they return, and based on everything I'm telling you, many of them will, they need to encounter someone who grew rather than withered. Someone who used the time wisely rather than desperately. Someone who became, in their absence, precisely the person they realize they want to be with. That encounter stops them in their tracks, and this time they're ready. The fifth reason they'll be back. Your detachment creates the first real possibility of genuine connection. This is the most counterintuitive principle, and it requires careful understanding. Detachment does not mean indifference. The Stoics were not cold, emotionless people who didn't care about others. Marcus Aurelius loved his wife deeply. Seneca wrote beautifully about friendship and connection. Stoic detachment means this. Your peace is not held hostage by outcomes outside your control. You care, but your okayness doesn't depend on how this turns out. Epictetus taught, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Right now, your attachment to a specific outcome, them coming back, them choosing you, them realizing what they had, is creating suffering. And that suffering is visible. They can feel it even from a distance. The desperate energy, the anxious waiting, the need for resolution. But detachment, genuine acceptance that life will be full and meaningful whether they return or not. That energy is completely different. And here's the profound irony. The moment you genuinely stop needing them to come back, you become most magnetic to their return. Not as a trick, as a reality. Because what comes back has the opportunity to be real in a way it never was before. When you were attached to the outcome, the relationship was built on your anxiety and their ambivalence. That's not love. That's a trauma bond. But when you've reached genuine detachment, when you're full within yourself, when you're not waiting for them to complete you, any reconnection that happens is between two whole people. And that's when commitment becomes possible for the first time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together. Accept first, love after, never the other way around." The sixth reason they'll be back. Your boundaries redefine what's acceptable. Here's something that happens when people leave or pull away, and you let them without chasing, without begging, without reducing yourself. You establish the most powerful standard you can set. Seneca wrote, "The man who has made up his mind to do a thing will find a way. The man who hasn't will find an excuse." When you stopped making excuses for their behavior, when you stopped explaining away the inconsistency, the unavailability, the half-commitment, when you simply, quietly, stopped accepting less than you deserved, something registered in them. Maybe not immediately, maybe not consciously, but it registered. People know when they're getting away with something, and when the person who was tolerating their behavior suddenly stops tolerating it, when the dynamic that was working in their favor suddenly no longer works, it creates a reckoning. They have to confront what they were doing. They have to sit with the reality that they treated someone who deserved better with less than they deserved. And if they have any self-awareness, any growth orientation, any genuine feeling for you, that reckoning is uncomfortable. Uncomfortable enough to motivate change. Here's what Marcus Aurelius understood. Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Your self-respect is the non-negotiable. The moment you hold that line, the moment you demonstrate through action, rather than words that you will not sacrifice your dignity for their comfort, you change the entire equation. They no longer have the option of the version of you that accepted crumbs. That version retired. The version that exists now has standards, has direction, has a life that doesn't pause for ambivalence, and that version is worth coming back for. That version is worth being serious about. That version is worth commitment. Now I need to tell you something that most people in your position don't want to hear, but that the Stoics would consider essential. Not everyone comes back, and not everyone who comes back deserves to be let back in. Marcus Aurelius wrote with radical honesty, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." Some people leave, and their leaving is a gift you won't recognize for years. Their absence creates space for something, and someone better aligned with who you truly are. Their departure removes an obstacle you were too close to see clearly. And if you've done the work, if you've returned to yourself, embraced the silence, elevated your life, become more, practiced detachment, established your standards, then whether they come back or not becomes almost secondary. Because here's the real transformation this journey produces. You stop being someone who needs a specific person to come back. You become someone who is whole, regardless of who stays or goes. Someone whose life is full, whose direction is clear, whose worth is self-determined. And from that place, if they come back, you can welcome them clearly, with eyes open, with standards maintained, with genuine possibility for something real. If they don't come back, your life continues forward, beautifully, fully, without the weight of waiting. Epictetus said it plainly. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Either way, you win. That's the promise of this path. Let's bring this all together. 6 reasons they'll be back, more committed than ever. 1. Radical self-return. You stop orbiting them and redevelop your own gravitational pull. 2. Silence speaks. You stop justifying your worth and let your absence communicate what your words never could. 3. Elevation is irresistible. You use this time to become genuinely more in every dimension. 4. You become what they weren't ready for, and when they're finally ready, you're the first person they think of. 5. Detachment creates real love. When you stop needing them to come back, the possibility of genuine connection finally exists. 6. Your standards become the standard. Your boundaries redefine what's acceptable and what they need to bring to deserve you. But I want to leave you with this. The most important shift in everything I've shared today is not about them. It never was. It's about you. The Stoics didn't study human nature to help people win back lovers. They studied it to answer a far more important question. How does a person live well? How does a person build a life of genuine meaning, genuine peace, genuine strength? And the answer they arrived at consistently across centuries of philosophy, observation, and lived experience is this: through radical ownership of your own inner world.